Good evening, my friends. Let's see if we can get this working. There we go. So, nice. Thursday. I hope everyone's had a good week and had some good practice at home. Summertime is so nice. You can meditate outside. And outside there's like all these impressions that keep coming. So it's actually quite a different experience to sit outside and meditate compared to sitting. I was going to say like we're sitting now, but I don't actually know where you were sitting, but at least how I'm sitting inside. So it's a different experience, and I highly recommend you try it, since it gives you the stuff to look at compared to when you're sitting quietly and safe and like protected. When you're outside, there's animals and there's insects, mosquitoes, birds, bugs, wind, heat, all kinds of stuff. Hey JVB. Did you write your question down from last time? Because I remember you had a question that we didn't have time to look at last time, so I promise we'll look at it today. Talking of meditating outside, there was a place in, I think it was a meditation center in Ella in Sri Lanka. Hey Andres, hope you had a good week. I've had a really good week, thank you very much. There was a meditation center in Ella in Sri Lanka where there was this famous monk who was there, and he had imagine a space 40 square meters, just like up on a mountain slope kind of. He had put poles in and just like a deck with roof over it, and you could sit there and meditate. It was just really nice place to sit and meditate. I enjoy that. Hi Catherine. I was just telling my fiance today that today I really felt like I had vacation. And yes, remember it, JVB. Today I really felt like I had vacation because I had time to work on our house. If anyone has a house and they've been doing renovations, you know that you finish everything, you put up the walls, put in the windows, you do the painting, you put the floor in, you do the stuff that needs to be done, and then you have the, I think it's called molding, the lists around, and then you go, you know what? We're almost done. We're gonna wait with the molding, the stuff on the floor and the caulking and everything to make it but we will just leave that until later. So now, 6 years later, I think it is, since we built the entry to our house. Now I finally did the roof. I did the planks and the moldings around one of the doors. And it's been one of those things that's just been lying in the back of my head, like, oh, this should be done. But it takes a day to do it. It's not big work, and it's actually really enjoyable. It's just when you have so many things to do, then everything more you need to do becomes a stressful thing. Story of my life. Thank you, procrastination. Yeah, I know, right? Especially with stuff like that. So for me, it was really liberating to get to have a whole day. And my fiance took care of the kids, and I could paint, and I could do the caulking, I put up the molding, and I could saw, and I could just measure and figure out. I love carpentry because you have to figure out solutions and how you're going to do it. And in the beginning, it's really scary because if you don't know anything about it, like I didn't when I started, then everything is like, oh, I might do something wrong. But then actually it's really fun when you understand the principles of how it works, because then you can improvise. Like there's a lot of solutions to one problem, as long as it's within the rules of what you can do, and actually it's something that will be safe, then there's lots of solutions to lots of problems. So it's really fun. So today I don't know if you can see it, but I have paint on my hands, and I have dry caulk, I think it's called caulk, the soft stuff. We call it latex to put around windows and stuff. So that feels really nice to have that done. It feels liberating. Now I just need another half year or so to finish the other things, and then the house will be done. That's part of the thing. Like when you have a home, there's always things to do. And it's fun stuff. It's just when you have too many things, then you have to choose what you need to do. And then you have to do like Catherine's saying, procrastinate. You just push it forward if you don't really need to do it. So I have a friend who's a carpenter, and he says basically that just do it. Like when you're done with the work, when I did this office that I'm doing, sitting in here, I just took his advice, and we finished all the moldings, we finished everything. So there's a little corner where there's one piece left, except for that, and I really need to finish. I want to do it this summer. Otherwise, everything's done. And it's just so liberating to have that, hey Christian, to have that finished. You don't have to think about it. Weeds, oh yeah. Yeah, we have that as well. We've tried to simplify. We actually took away some of the flower beds because there's no point in having flower beds if you don't pick the weeds. So try to do things that we can work out. I live in on the west coast of Sweden. Yeah, we have and now it's summertime here and it's quite nice. Actually, it's very nice today. But yeah, finish things. And then also another thing that one of my carpenter friends told me is that if you're doing something, say you're doing molding around a window, and it's not perfect, it works kind of, but it's like, yeah. Then he says, take that half hour, that hour, and redo it, because you're going to be looking at that for the next 10 years. So that half hour to get it actually looking good is worth it. And you're just going to like annoy yourself at it later. So just take the time to do it properly, and also finish what you started so you don't get like the next project. And that's something I used to be really poor at, and I still am. Who taught you carpentry? I taught myself, and I had friends and YouTube. So basically I wanted to build out the house that we live in. So I built a cottage. It's called a Attefallshouse in Sweden. It's 25 square meters. And it has the standard of a real house, and it's much nicer than our home. And then I built that with the help of a friend who like guided me through how to do things. And then I just figured it out. It's not difficult to build a house. It's just that we give all special things we give away to specialists, kind of. So it's like you couldn't obviously build your house. They tell you have to, if I hire a specialist to do it, or you can fix your car, you have to hire a specialist. And there are things you shouldn't do yourself, and there are rules for, like, especially in Sweden, is electricity and water you have to think about. But otherwise, there's lots of things you can do. And we have this, I think it's a culture thing that's coming now, that you're not supposed to do anything yourself. Like, you can't raise your child. Your school is supposed to raise your child. You can't take care of your own body. You go to a doctor and they take care of everything for your own body. And then there's the opposite of that, where people do crazy stuff because they just have no idea what they're doing. So I get why they want specialists to do things, but at the same time, you can do a lot of things yourself, and it's not really that complicated. Let's see. There we go. Nice. Let's sit, and then we can talk afterwards. And I'm going to remember JVB. Everyone remember JVB, okay? No questions before he asks his question. So we start, for those of you who are new, we start the same way we always do, which is with the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. We say 5 things out aloud that we can see, 4 things we can touch, 3 things we can hear, 2 things we can smell, and 1 thing we can taste. And we say it out aloud because we want to really bring focus to those things. Because the thing is, when we get stuck in our mind, or when we feel bad, the solution to that is not to try to change your thoughts or to learn some secret technique. The solution to feeling bad in general is to come back to your senses. There's even the expresses, you have to come back to your senses. And the way that I'm talking about is actually coming back to your senses. So really feeling things, really seeing things, and really being aware. Because you'll notice when you feel bad or when you're angry, you're kind of, it's almost like it's fuzzy. You're not aware of what you can see, and you can move around. You can drive your car for half an hour, but you have no idea what you've done. So to get it out from this like distortion place where you're just being angry or feeling bad or anxiety, you come back to your senses, and you can shock yourself back into your senses by taking a cold shower, doing activities like that. You can also come back to your senses by meditating, like doing what we're doing now. And then afterwards, when you get up, the meditation doesn't stop, because when you get up, then you do, again, you're aware of your senses, so you use your senses. So we're not just doing this to, yes, you are JVB, we're not just doing this to become calm. We're actually doing this to come back to our senses. So this 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method is a way to become aware of our senses. So you say it together with me. If it's not possible for you to say it out loud, then you can just say it in your head. But it helps to say it out loud and really stop. And not, we say, so I'll say 5 things, and you can follow me, and I'll say, I see a sofa. And when I say a sofa, I don't feel sofa. I try to really see the colors, the textures, the fabric, the shapes and the shadows coming from the lamp here. I really try to see. I can also see the reflections in my camera lens. I can see myself in delay on the computer. And I can see a throat pill here on the throat pastel on the floor, a tube for it. And I can see my socks lying here with grass on them. So those are 5 things that I can see. Now we come to our sense of touch. And I can touch this sofa. And I'm really feeling the touching. What does that feel like? Again, it's not that you're supposed to just say these things and do them. We're supposed to actually experience them. I can touch my beard. And I can touch the carpet in front of me. I can touch the ceramic of this cup. Then we do 3 things that we can hear. So we gradually get to senses that require more attention to become aware of, because we're usually not as aware of the senses when we go down. So I can hear the fan from the AC. I hear the tires of a passing car. And I just heard our hens in the garden. Next we take 2 things that we can smell. Now you really have to focus to be aware of 2 things that you can smell. I can smell some kind of chemical from when I was working before. I can smell the stuffiness in this room. Finally, we do 1 thing that we can taste. I can taste the rooibos in my rooibos tea. usual, you can continue to sit, or you're welcome to ask questions if you have any, or just drink a cup of tea maybe for a while. When we finish the meditation, realize that the meditation isn't over. The whole idea is that you've been sitting still for 20 minutes and you've been focusing on your breath or whatever technique you're using. And now when you're opening your eyes up again, it's not like, okay, now it's done, and just go and break that awareness. Instead, see it as, try to keep that same awareness of what's going on inside as you're pouring your cup of tea, or as you're typing on your keyboard, or looking around you. Whatever you're doing, just stay with that awareness, because that's the whole point we're doing this. If the only thing you get from this sitting is 20 minutes of calmness, I mean, that's a bit of a waste. It's not really worth it if that is all that you get from this. So I highly recommend that afterwards, just like when I'm doing this, I'm really feeling, what does it feel like to run my hand over through my hair. My neck is a bit stiff, and then you just feel and become aware of everything that you're experiencing, which is why it's good to take it a bit calmer in the beginning after you've been sitting. See, I'm waiting for JVB to write me that super question. I can, while I'm doing that, I can answer. Philip was asking, can you combine Buddhism and Taoism? I have a friend who's a Taoist. No, he's a Taoist master. I'll have to ask him. He's more into it than me. I think they call it I'm not that sure about Taoism. I know Taoism. To be honest, I mean, if it works, then it works. It's not really that there's any right and wrong here. I personally don't subscribe to anything that goes outside of now, meaning what happens before death or after death. That's like, I simply don't know. I consider it a complete waste of time to discuss those things, since we can never know the answers. But if you take the essence of both of those traditions, I don't think there would be any issues combining them. I don't see why there would be any problem with that. But I honestly don't know. I'm not a religious person myself. I'm not even a Buddhist, even though I was a Buddhist monk for many years. Because I wasn't a monk for the Buddhism's sake. I was a monk because I wanted to explore the mind, which is, from the beginning, that's why people became like monks, because they wanted to explore the mind, not because they wanted to become Buddhist. I mean, the religion, Buddhism, wasn't even there when the Buddha was alive, and the form of Buddhism we have now is very likely very far away from what was actually taught back then. I mean, we simply don't know. Are you still there, JVB, or are you still meditating? Or maybe you dropped off? Or if not, if anyone else has any questions they want to ask. I'm here. I sent my question. Oh, I didn't see it. I don't think it got through, JVB. Or was it who taught me carpentry? No. If I look up on the past questions, I only see, can you combine Buddhism and Taoism? And then Lula, I'm in the spotlight, who taught you carpentry? I don't see any question, JVB. Maybe, I've heard that it throttles sometimes how much you can send. Dance reactions. I haven't put any limitations, but I've had that before. Someone told me that they couldn't post. I have not put any limits on how much people can post, but for some reason, sometimes That's strange. Could you type it again, please? Or maybe it's that the chat in YouTube doesn't work, because sometimes it just doesn't get through. See, Here, Catherine's asking a question. I'll take that in between. Are there stages of enlightenment, or is enlightenment or not enlightenment? Apologies, I'm a beginner. No, that's perfectly fine, Catherine. So, that question is more complicated than you think, and there's a reason for that. First of all, what is enlightenment? What does it mean? That everyone seems to think that, oh, it's enlightenment, it's kind of blah, blah, blah. But if you look at it, there's a book that talks about this. I think it's 45, I'm just between 40 and 50 different definitions of what enlightenment means. Some have the limited actions, meaning when you become enlightened, you can't kill. You literally can't. Your body is like stopped from killing. Some say that you can't have certain emotions. Some say you can't think certain thoughts. Some say that you get special powers. You can see into the past, into the future. You can do magic, and like there's all kinds of definitions. So first of all, you have to decide what is enlightenment. That's not an easy question to answer, because it depends on who you ask. Secondly, are there stages? So that depends on what tradition you look into. There are most traditions, and if I talk about Buddhism, they have 4 stages of enlightenment, which is Sotapanna, Sakaragami, Anagami, or Arahant. And that's stream entry, means you get into the stream, and then you have the other stage basically means you go deeper into that stream. And like I said, it simply depends on what tradition. If you go the tradition that I hung around most, which was the Mahasi Sayadaw tradition, they have very set definitions of what happens, and there's something called jnanas, the knowledge of, and there's a cycle you go through. And this is not just something made up. There actually is some very specific things that happen when you sit, especially when you sit intensely. That you can feel how it starts out, you like don't really know what's happening. You go through, you get some aches and pains, your body can start moving, and then you shoot up when you get into something called the rising and passing away, and it feels like, oh, I got this figured out now. Your mind is super sharp. And then after that, it goes down, down, down. It goes really down, and you get into the dark night of the soul, and things get really dark. And then if you get through that, you get into equanimity. And if you get past equanimity, which is when everything is just okay, there is no need to practice, because there's no problem anymore. But if you can get past that, then you experience nirodha, which is cessation, or nirvana, as some people call it. You don't exist for a period of time. And literally it's like you're sitting and then you're back again, but that time just disappears. And once you've done that the first time, then you've created your first stage of enlightenment. And in the Mahasi tradition, that means you are Sotapanna. So the first day. Second time you go through it is Sakaragami. Third time, Anagami. And then the 4th time is not necessarily fully enlightened Arahant. There's other ways of talking about that, so that's a bit more complicated. There are others who say that they're just, it's enlightenment or not, but most of them have some kind of stage system. What I'm talking about now is very well documented in the Mahasi tradition, and you can follow and see. If you have someone who is a teacher in that tradition, they can kind of see where you are on this map. I just made a very simplified version where there's quite a lot more to it. And it can be beneficial to know where you are, because in the beginning, certain things are more important than in the middle and the end. In the beginning, it's simply just routine getting through it. When you have the rising and passing away, it's so short usually, it's like a few days or hours. And then when you get into the dark night of the soul, or the dukkha jnanas, then it's really one focus that is quite different from here. And then equanimity is very different as well, because then there just doesn't seem to be any point in meditating, because you don't have a problem anymore. So there's different things you focus on in these different stages. And this can happen, like if you go to an intensive retreat for a few months, you will go through this first stage very likely. If you have for most people, I think you would go through it if you go there a few months. It's not really as spectacular as it sounds. My definition is very simple. I have a really, really simple definition I don't talk about enlightenment, I talk about liberation. Meaning, you hear me talk about distortion, how you're distorting towards things. When I'm sitting here the sense of self comes from the pressure or the tension that I have towards the world around me. Meaning I have a sense of what this sofa would feel like. If I would have a big like lead weight hanging above me that could crush me, that would make me go, ooh, like this. That's a distortion. Again, I'm not saying that I shouldn't move out of the way from that lead weight, but it will make me feel something. If I'm sitting next to someone I love, it would make me feel a distortion. Someone I hate, it makes, so all of this pressure is creating this sense of self. And when you go into a stage of non-centeredness or non-duality, that just disappears. Meaning that there is no sense that this is reflecting. And then you're just doing what we did in the beginning when I said, well, what I tried to get you to do when I said use your senses. Meaning you just see these shapes, colors, textures, and the world is it's like heaven on earth. There's no need to be anywhere else. And it's not that the world is different and there's magic and you can see powers or some kind of energies. Like, no, the world just as it is, without you messing things up, is fantastic and absolutely remarkable. And everyone's experienced this to a certain degree. When you're out walking in nature and you see a morning. I mean, if you go out into nature in the morning and there's like mist hanging around and there's that smell and the birds are singing and you just go out and you go, and there's a beautiful landscape around you and you just feel peacefulness in your soul. There's nowhere you need to go, there's nowhere you need to be, there's nothing you need to do. You just feel content standing there, and that feeling of peacefulness, that is non-centeredness. You're not feeling a strong sense of me or non-duality, but a soft version of that. So the more you can take away these distortions, the more that will be how you're experiencing reality all the time. Not how we in the West tend to do it, meaning that you gain and you succeed and you win the game and you get the girl and then you crash and burn, but then you fight on through it and you get through it. It's like completely removed from that. I'm not saying those things are bad. I'm just saying from doing what we're trying to do here, that's something completely different. So I hope that answered your question on if there are stages or how it works. Now, let's see JVB. People who I thought were friends have either stopped talking to me or treated me harshly. I feel betrayed when this happens and want to blame myself. How could I control self-blame and love myself? I'll read it again. People who I thought were friends have either stopped talking to me or treated me harshly. I feel betrayed when this happens and want to blame myself. How could I control self-blame and love myself? So there's two parts to this, and I'll, because what most people would want to say is like, oh, don't blame yourself. You should just accept yourself for who you are and love yourself. Like, yeah, I agree with that. But I want to separate it into two things that you can focus on. So first of all, it might actually be because of you that they stopped talking to you. I mean, I don't know. You haven't told me that. So if you're acting like an asshole and are rude and are not polite to them, then they might stop talking to you because of that. Or maybe you're acting in a way that they simply find unacceptable. So then, yes, that is because of you that they stop talking to you. That's one thing. If that's the case. It could also be that that's not at all the case. It could be that they have their own things going on. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, that's a separate thing that I will put to the side because I don't know about that. And it wouldn't be pointless for me to sit here and be some kind of arbiter and say that, yeah, you did this and they did that. Yeah, you're right. They're to blame. You're right. So, but what we can work with is blame. Because that's the issue here. We're talking about two different things, and that's why I don't talk about how to solve problems. I just talk about how to deal with what they feel like. And the funny thing is that when you become okay with how things are, then usually things solve themselves, because you won't be looking at it from a sense of victimhood or from the sense of anger or being the person who is good or bad. Like, that becomes secondary. I assume I'm not the asshole. Yeah, I actually do assume that you're not the asshole. But that's besides the point. So the thing is that that's how the acting is happening. But and I can't, that's not really my specialty. You should go to someone who's into personal development, something like that. That's one thing. But what we can look at is I feel, treat me harshly, I feel betrayed when this happens and want to blame myself. Those two things I am interested in. So feeling betrayed, that is a distortion. there's this sense that they did something to me and now I'm supposed to feel betrayed. And I'll give you an example from when I felt betrayed. Might be too strong of a word, I wouldn't use that, but I felt mistreated, let's say that. So earlier today, I was fixing up in our entry to the house, and there was plastic lying around there, and my daughter came in, and she couldn't go through the door because there was plastic there, and I painted. And she came and she's like, "Papa, come, you have to do this." And she was a bit upset. I'm like, here I am, and I'm fixing our home and making it nice. And my fiance was the same way, fixing it nice. And I spent all this time to paint, and like I spent the whole day of my free time to make our house nice, and people are complaining. So I could then feel like, hey, that's not fair. You should be appreciative. You should be happy that I'm doing this, and you should be grateful. But then that thought kind of came, and as soon as it came up, I was like, well, this is kind of silly. Am I gonna ruin my day? Because I was really enjoying myself. I was really enjoying painting, really enjoying doing the molding and fixing everything up. Why would I ruin my day because they had an opinion that the plastic should be different? I mean, they had a point. I could simply move the plastic. It would make sense. It didn't need to lie in the middle of the way so that it was difficult for them to get through. So they had a point in that. But I looked at my distortion, meaning my sense of like, hey, that's not fair. I'm doing this. They shouldn't be complaining. They should just accept it as it is and be grateful. That's the self coming out and distorting. That part you can look at. So that's the same as when you're saying, I feel betrayed. There's also feeling like, hey, they went behind my back. They did something they shouldn't have done, which may be true. That might be true. But you can look at that and say, are you going to let that ruin your day? Are you going to let that ruin your life or your sense of wanting to be here? Because what happens when you have that feeling of feeling betrayed is that it's not nice to be here. You want to get away from here. And my goal with everyone I talk to is to get you to see that you can always feel good with being whatever you are. And there are certain circumstances that are extremely difficult that 99.99% of people are watching this will never have to deal with. But for things like this is not life ending. This is not a war zone. We're talking about relationships. And yes, you felt betrayed. And it might be that people who act that way towards you might not be people you should hang around because they're not treating you in a way that you want to. So I'm not saying just let them treat you however you do, however they want to. But what I am saying is that how you react towards that is something you can really look at and you can make work better, if that makes sense. And you blame yourself. It's the same thing there. You blame yourself. That's something that you're coming because... Let me try to say that without making it sound like criticism, because it's not that I'm saying you're a bad... thank you, Catherine. It's not that I'm saying that you're a bad person and that you deserve this. I'm just saying that whatever that is, I'm not touching that. I'm not saying you should blame yourself, or I'm not saying you shouldn't blame yourself. Sorry. I'm not saying it's your fault, or I'm not saying it's not your fault, but I'm saying you should not blame yourself, meaning that feeling of like, whatever that is. Instead, look at that and see the distortion in that and see, can I let go of this and actually enjoy being here? And then when you do that, then from that place, you can take action. But then you can decide, do I want to try to regain contact with them again and try to understand why did they do this? Because if you take that away and you just feel completely calm and you walk up, it would be like you walked up to a stranger and you say, hey, you stranger, why did you turn your back to me? Like, I'm curious. Did you turn your back to me because you were upset with me for something, or because you have no emotional, there's no tension there, it's just a question. Whereas if you would go back now, you would probably feel like, oh no, I did something wrong, maybe I did, and you have all this worry, and you come with that energy and that feeling towards them, and they will feel that, and then they'll respond a certain way to you. If you come with anger, they will become defensive. If you come with neediness, they will feel that you're needy. Instead, work with how you're relating to it, how you're reacting to it first, and then you take the action. At times, JVB is continuing, at times I think I see myself as righteous, and this makes me feel entitled to having good relationships automatically. I will work on this. Yes, that's righteousness is a terrible thing to in person, because that means that, yeah, that's from the perspective of what we're trying to do here, then righteousness is counterproductive, to say the least. Again, you're setting the rules. You're saying they should or shouldn't behave in a certain way and that they should accept you. I'm not here to judge, and it's not my job to say that. I'm just saying that when you put yourself above others like that, that creates a certain kind of distortion towards it. So instead, I always move people towards feeling, how am I experiencing this? If you have a conflict with someone, instead, and people often ask me, how do I solve this conflict? What should I do? What's the right answer? What should I invest in this? Should I be friends with that person? Should I become a partner with this one? And I never answer that, which a lot of people like to do in the spiritual niche or self-development. They come up with good solutions, and there are some who are really good at finding out, okay, you should do this, but that's not what I do. I look at how do you distort towards it. So if you go into, let's say you have I think we talked about a girl the other time, I think that was you. If you go up to them and you ask them from the perspective like, oh, I'm this little person and you're this person up on a pillar, then that will create a dynamic, and it will be very difficult for you to approach them. But if you can just see, okay, it's just a person, if you can feel calm with that and see appreciation for who they are and see like, oh, they're beautiful, they're kind, they seem to be someone who laughs a lot, and they seem to be having similar interests like me, and I enjoy being with them, then you come to them with that. And that's, first of all, much more attractive and much easier to approach with. So it's the same here. I would work with how you feel betrayed and how you blame yourself, meaning look at that and completely skip if that's right or wrong, meaning that it doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. That's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to look at that feeling and let go of that and try to enjoy just being here, just enjoy being alive, just whatever it is you're doing, just enjoy being there, not because of an outer circumstance and not because of an inner circumstance, just because of the mere fact that you are here and you have your senses and experiencing reality. And then when you've calmed that down, then you can take action from that. So then you can look into, okay, is there a reason? Maybe because when you let go of that feeling of being betrayed and feeling that you blame yourself, then you can see clearly, because now you're always going to be seeing through a filter. Then you can go in and look at it and you say, oh, you know what? The reason they did that might actually be because that was a bit weird of me to behave that way. Maybe that thought that wasn't nice, or maybe they think that I'm asking too much, which may or may not be true. But you can look at that without feeling guilty, without blaming yourself. It's a difficult question, because when the way you ask it is you want an answer, and I can't give you the answer you want, but I can help you look at it and try to change that around. But that's not something we can just do in 5 minutes like this. That's the kind of stuff I work with people when we do coaching, and we actually look into these things and see how that feels. A really good way of doing it that I recommend to a lot of people is what I call movie meditation. So you take a movie that has these kind of dynamics where someone is betrayed, and you look at that movie and you sit down and you start meditating, and then you start the movie. And when you feel the same distortions, feeling betrayed, feeling like you're to blame, then you pause the movie and you look at that distortion and you learn to deal with it. I hope that helps. Stop calling me a weirdo. Yeah, I hope you don't take it personal. And I'm not calling you a weirdo. I'm saying I don't know. And I don't feel like you are a weirdo, so that's fine. Let's see. Andreas is saying, can you recommend a good meditation retreat here in Sweden? Yes, I can. Depends on where you live, but there's one called Dhammasubana, I think it is. It's between Stockholm and Gothenburg, and it's in the Goenka retreat. Sorry, the Goenka tradition, which is often called Vipassana, which is not Goenka, but they're called Vipassana retreats. And they're 10-day retreats that you go to, where you have 10 days, 3 days sitting, 3 days, 3 days sitting with concentration meditation, and then you have 3 days of Vipassana. And it's I call it the McDonald's of meditation, because it's based on the franchise metaphor, where you basically have very strict rules for how the employees or the volunteers behave, and even the teachers, and you're guided by a tape by a man called Essen Goenka. Beautiful centers, very generic, and I don't like the technique myself. I don't think it's the best technique, but there is no better way to try out intensive meditation than going to a Goenka retreat. I highly recommend it. Let's see, Catherine. Oh yeah, it's that one. And then we have Andres again. Or our thoughts do not always agree with what reality is. Easy to magnify one's bad thoughts than see positive. Yes, absolutely. And we tend to do that. We tend to make things feel worse than they are. Some people do the other way around. They just see the good stuff and they can't see bad stuff about themselves. And what I'm saying is if you stop having this strong sense of self, you'll see both of them, because both could be true. JVB, of course. Thank you for the insights. I hope it helps. And like I said, it's not at all to pick on you, and it's not to say that you're a bad person. It's just that if I would tell you something that would make you feel good right now, and I would say like, yes, that's not how friends behave, they shouldn't do that, obviously you're right, and I can tell from just the way you're typing that you're a kind person, obviously, like, that wouldn't do any service, and you can go to anyone who can tell you that. But I think it's much more useful to actually look at how you're feeling against this, about this, and work with that directly, because that really can make a difference. Nice. It's getting late. Time flies. I really do appreciate these questions, and I really enjoy these evenings. I'm often tired, and many times I'm just like, I just go to bed now, or do my own meditation, or do some yoga. But I enjoy talking to you and hearing thoughts and getting to explain, and it helps me structure my thoughts, and it helps me think about it myself, because these things aren't obvious, even though I intellectually know them. This is not about understanding intellectually, or it's not understanding at all. It's about experiencing. And that's something, until you're actually done with it completely, if that's even possible. It's my hypothesis that you could be. But until then, it's always something you'll be working on. It just gets a lot easier the more you do it. And when you realize eventually that I can choose if I want to be here right now, or if I want to move away from here because of some conflict that I've created in my mind, which again might not at all be happening for the other people. It might be completely happening in our own minds. So yeah, thank you for that. Good, JVB. I'm happy you feel it that way. I'll see everyone back on Monday, where it's a guided meditation, and I wish everyone a pleasant weekend and a nice summer. Thank you.